Well, hello everybody, so welcome to another review as read. Today we're talking about Ravenloft, Strahd, the War Against Azalin by P. and Elrod. And today we will do it in the same format. We'll talk about the book, we'll talk about the cons, the pros, and a conclusion. So let us begin. First things first, Ravenloft, Strahd, the War Against Azalin is basically the follow-up book by the same author for Strahd, the Memoirs of a Vampire. And Ravenloft, Strahd, the Memoirs of a Vampire is basically the one that introduces Ravenloft, the world, and the lead character is Strahd, the Vampire Lord. Alright? And after that, this book, The War Against Azalin, introduces Azalin, the character, and that is in fact followed up by another author called Jean DeWeese about his story about him ruling his own land in Lord of the Necropolis. Alright, now I done review of both of these books, links below, but just to let you know that this although it's a follow-up book, but definitely can be read by itself. Elrod has a good reason, has a good writing style that makes it work, and I'll talk about that later. But if you wanted to know more, those books are definitely where to go. Alright, and so what's the War Against Azalin about? The War Against Azalin is basically, like I said, a follow-up to Memoirs of a Vampire. It's about Strahd, who basically has ruled Bavaria for hundreds of years, and how he's learning to live in his mist prison. Just for those who don't know, Ravenloft, the world, is each of these lead characters rules a small part of that world, and it's covered by mist, and they can't leave it. So basically, this is Strahd accepting that he's not accepting that fate, but he's learned to live with it. And it's also, this book basically is about how he deals with the everyday life of that situation. At the same time, during all this, he gets a warning by someone that says if someone's going to come to challenge his rule of Bavaria, and if he loses, the world's going to get destroyed. And that person is of course Azalin. So now it introduces the character of Azalin, and most of the book is basically about the interplay between the two of them, because they need each other to try to escape, to find a way to escape the mist prison, because Azalin has a huge magical potential, and Strahd is the only one that can learn new spells due to some limitation due to Azalin. So they need to work with each other. At the same time, they have to withhold information. So it's somewhat like a Sherlock Holmes novel, even. You know, like how Sherlock Holmes is about solving a mystery, but at the same time it's more about character piece, about how Sherlock Holmes solves the mystery. Same thing here. This book is basically character pieces on Strahd and Azalin, and they have a common goal, but it's more about showing you about how their character works. So that's basically what the War Against Azalin is about. So first let's talk about the cons. The cons really is, it shows the title, The War Against Azalin, because if you really look at it, the War Against Azalin is the full war that is. It's basically about, let's say about that much of the book. It's about 80 pages, alright, about this much. Excuse me. It's about 80 pages of the book. So firstly, if you buy this book expecting a full-fledged fantasy warfare and all that, you're not gonna get it. On top of that, the war part is definitely the weakest part of the book, and it does feel somewhat tacked on, because the war basically comes and it goes. That's it. So that's basically the biggest flaw of the book, is that expectations of the war, and it's not much of the book really. So that's about the only bad thing I say about the book. The pros let's go into the pros. The pros, P.N.R.'s writing. Like I said, for Memoirs of a Vampire, he has this amazing ability of flow, which is like a good episode of Game of Thrones, where you finish reading a chapter, seeing an episode of Game of Thrones, and you want to know what happens next. Same thing here. You finish a chapter, I would love to learn to write like this. How he would just make you want to turn the page, more and more and more, and he does that very well. Even at his weakest points, I must say, at the war part, is still a good read. And again, this continues with the same format of how Elrod writes the Ravenloft world at the time, which is memoirs. Someone finds the memoirs and is reading them, and he also has some of Azalin's memoirs. And it's a strange thing because this strange way of writing in that, in this book at least, is because you can see everybody's secret thoughts in their memoirs. You know how you always had the feeling that people are talking behind your back, and then how people react in real life? This book does that because the two of them don't like each other. So like Strahd will say something like, I don't like this guy, blah blah, this habit, and then they would go into real time about how they are interacting without the other person knowing that knowledge about what he thinks of him. So it's very interesting, and how they do snide comments against each other. Like they start to find out what their ticks of each other, and like, I'm going to purposely do this to annoy him, you know. So again, great piece of that writing, and this is definitely a character piece book than a war book, because as a book by itself, strangely, and in itself, Elrod writes really well because he doesn't tread old ground with Strahd. At the same time, you can still read this without reading Memoirs of a Vampire. He still lets you know about how Strahd comes about and all that, but he doesn't go through the whole story again. At the same time, he introduces us a lot more about how Strahd is as a character now, you know, like how he's really become more than human, you know, because many times in the book, Strahd would hypnotize or take over a human, and he would talk how different it is to be vulnerable, example, and how he rules the land by he's strict but fair. And you get another character piece with Azalin, who gets introduced also very well, and how Azalin is a absolute dictator, which he doesn't care about the people. He's not fair. It's not as you listen to him, basically, you know, and he will kill people for no other reason. At the same time, you get a sense of feeling that Azalin has his own sense of honor, because he actually keeps his promises sometimes, most of the time, you know. And it's this interplay between the two of them, how they go back and forth. So again, fantastic writing. At the same time, this book does what is very important, which is improve your knowledge on the world of Ravenloft. Alright. Again, it doesn't come... Again, the cool thing about Ravenloft is that you don't know what's really happening, how come the world is the way it is. And it adds more snippets. Like example, this time the rule of Bavaria is Bavaria, and there's a mist around it, which both of them can't escape. And it evolves because you don't know whether through the experimentation or whatever it is, different parts of little parts of the world start to attach themselves to Bavaria. And how each of them seems to be ruled by one bad character, or, you know, when I say bad, it means they're basically in a normal sense, like example, liches and ghosts and lords and stuff like that. And how each of them they can't escape their own land, they have mastery over it, and the whole land takes their personality in a way. So basically, again, it improves that aspect, which is very important. It lets you know more about the Ravenloft world. Alright, it's like discovering a new mystery, more of a mystery, basically. So in conclusion, basically it's a good read, even though the only thing you have to watch out for is, don't expect a war. It's a character piece between two great characters, one that gets introduced and one that is built on. So it improves on Strahd, introduces Azalin well, and it improves your knowledge on the Ravenloft world. Even as a book by itself, it's a really interesting read. It's a book with lots of flow. So definitely I would say pick it up, take a read. So thank you very much. Till next word.